How can we put these tips into action in order to produce one coherent lesson? Let's take Animal Farm by George Orwell, and let's go back to that starting point of working out what the text is really about. Well, firstly, Orwell's use of animals as symbols for different types of people is really engaging. And the theme of rebellion is really relatable to young people. The context of capitalism versus communism is still relevant today. And animal cruelty can produce a really emotional response from students. There's also that big question, should we ever challenge authority? These all make for a really interesting and promising start to our hook lesson. Now that we've explored our key base ideas, let's build an engaging starter that's going to grab our students' attention as soon as they come in. Let's take the idea that Orwell uses animal symbols in order to explore different types of people. Maybe to relate this to our students, we can think about what animals they might consider themselves to be like, physically, personality-wise, or alternatively, what animal would they like to be and why? I might do some storytelling here. I might give a really good example of the sort of animal that I am. Again, you'll notice that I get students to discuss briefly before writing. I'm a big believer in the idea that when students write first, it means that everyone has to engage and produce something, but also that it allows them to explore their ideas in a fuller way prior to discussion. So far, we've related the text to our students and we've done some storytelling. How can we relate this to the world around us? Well, I've picked an article called Violent Humans Are Animals, but Not Behaving Like Animals by Mark Bekoff. This article explores the idea of whether humans can really behave like animals, or actually are animals a lot more ethical than their human counterparts. I allow students to read, to summarise ideas, and then respond to the statement, humans behave just like animals, in order to once again prepare for more talk. Talk based on writing, which is more developed and clear. I've also used some images of animal cruelty to kind of sway their direction of thinking so that they can really interrogate this topic as a whole. It will also produce some emotional response. So far, we've used our key concepts in order to create a series of starter-style, bite-sized activities to begin to get your students to connect to your topic and text. We've generated some discussion, we've got students interested, curious, but now we want to create a main activity that is both memorable and meaningful, that is going to now develop and extend this understanding. So far, we have touched on the cornerstones of storytelling, big ideas, emotional response, and world relevancy. But now we're on to the main activity, which is going to try to incorporate all four of these things. I asked students to get into groups of 5 and gave them the challenge of building a windmill in 15 minutes out of resources at the front of my classroom. They had scissors, glue, cardboard, paper, pipe cleaners. The only 2 requirements was that the windmill had to be over 1 metre high and have rotors that turn. This was a really engaging activity because it was different from what we would normally do day to day. It was kinesthetic, it included some teamwork, and the students were intrigued to know as to why they were asked to do this. It didn't seem immediately obvious. However, myself knowing that the animals build a windmill in the text, and that the way the animals interact during this building is important, provoked my idea to create this lesson. Because whilst the students are making the windmill, I am busy observing them and taking notes of their behaviours. At the end, I then gave some feedback. I pointed out about groups that had worked well. Some people had become leaders. A very successful group who had all integrated produced a beautiful windmill. Another group, nobody had done very much at all. Everyone had sort of fallen flat. Some groups had had conflict. Some groups had got very competitive. And this was an observation that as humans, we are all different ourselves, and that the meshing of our different personalities can be a help or a hindrance. This is very relevant to the text itself. Are you a leader? Are you a follower? Do you question? Do you take part? Afterwards, I asked students to write down what kind of animal they thought they were during the task. They discussed with their teams and then wrote, and we had a further discussion. Finally, I wanted to really begin to relate the learnings from this lesson to the text. So I gave them the images of various farm animals, and I asked them to imagine what different traits these animals had if they were people. What personality traits, what physical traits. It's almost inverting the activity that they did in their very first starter, in which they imagined the animals that they were. Well, what kind of people are these animals? I then asked them as a final discussion point to place them in a hierarchy, which would be most powerful and why. Because as we're going to see in Animal Farm, some animals are more powerful than others. And there you have it. A lesson that will really hook and engage students through those key concepts that we've looked at so far. What connections can we see then that the students have made with the ideas of the text? Well, they go away with a basic understanding of allegory. They can explore the idea that different animals might symbolise different things, different types of people. And they have the real world context of animal cruelty that's really relevant to the opening chapter where we see Farmer Jones locking up the chickens. There's engaging storytelling throughout that activity where I tell them the story of the activity that they've just done. I feed back to them on the sort of team players they were, the sort of characters that they showed. And finally, we've evaluated the big idea of the text. Are humans really superior to animals? And there you have it. Using Graves and Graves' scaffolded reading experience, we've produced a hook lesson that will motivate and engage your students to the point that they are excited to read the text and want to find out what happens. So, a question. How do you engage and hook your students? Leave us a comment below and share your own ideas. Also, if you found this video useful, please like and subscribe. This is our first video, but we will hope to produce more content soon. And finally, you can find me on social media on Twitter, here. Thanks for watching.